So good day and welcome to TRX Gold's Investor Call. We are glad you can join us today. My name is Christina Lally, Vice President for TRX Gold. Our executive team will take you through a corporate update and brief review of recent Q3 results. We will end the call with a brief Q&A session, so please feel free to submit your questions by using the Q&A button at the top bar of your screen. Before getting started, please take note of the cautionary and forward-looking statements, as well as note to U.S. investors found on page 2 of our corporate presentation. Without further ado, I'll pass the floor to Stephen Maloney, Chief Executive Officer of TRX Gold.
Thank you, Christina, for the introduction, and welcome everybody to the call. I see quite a few parties still joining, and quite a few parties are on the line, and quite a few shareholders, potential investors, and others. So first and foremost, I'd like to start off by thanking our shareholders for sticking around. It's been a tough couple months in the financial market, so we appreciate the support that we've gotten from our shareholder group, and it's greatly appreciated. Hopefully today, the potential investors and potential shareholders, we're going to give you reasons why to be involved in TRX and become a shareholder. And then I would like to have a special thank you to our chairman, Jim Sinclair, who is also on the line, with regards to a lot of things that have happened at TRX over the last year were precipitated by Jim, and he's a major reason why you see the executive team that you see in front of us, in front of you actually, and a lot of the stuff that's precipitated from that team, it will be presented in the deck today, and a lot of good things have happened at TRX over last year. So without further ado, my colleagues, Christina, Mike, our CFO, and Andrew are with me. We are open to all questions. So please feel free to put your questions into the question board. No questions are really off limit. We're a management team that will answer pretty much any question that is put in front of us. And we look forward to giving you an update here of our Q3 results and other things that we're doing. We're very excited for the future of TRX. I think the last year, personally on my end, has been extremely exciting in building the team out, developing Buckreef into a producer, and then really figuring out what Buckreef is going to be really all about and the potential exploration that it has. We were all comfortable with the main zone, but as you can tell from our press releases, there's a lot more than just the main zone at Buckreef, and will probably be a lot bigger property than anybody anticipated over time. We still have to develop it, but we're very excited for the potential that it has in the future. So without further ado, I will jump right into it. And I'm going to start really on the front page. I was going to flip to the other page, but I'm going to start with the front page. Here you see our mining asset. This is a picture that was taken a couple of weeks ago. As you can see, the pit is exposed. The pit currently is where the old road was. And you can see the Buckreef shear zone coming to surface. You can see some of the white quartz there that's an outcropping. So the mineralization comes pretty much right up to the top, which makes easy mining from an open pit perspective. To get a sense of the size and scale that this will be eventually, and this is the main pit. If you look off towards the horizon and see the hills and the houses that are there and the flat ground that exists at Buckreef, the pit will ultimately go that far out. And this is about the middle of the pit, so we'll go the same length on the other side for over 2 kilometers. So it is a significant mining asset, and Andrew knows this is significant well. He just returned 10 days from Buckreef, and I'm going to add to my comment there, Andrew.
Yes, Stephen, thank you very much, and greetings to all those on the call today. Stephen, I think we're going to see as we get into the presentation that not only do we have a great asset, but I think we're going to see the very rapid progress that I witnessed in terms of plant construction. So let's get into it.
Excellent, thank you. So getting into it, Christina went through the cautionary statement, so I won't bore anybody else with the cautionary statement. As we introduced ourselves, you have myself, the CEO, Stephen, Andrew, COO, Michael, our CFO, and Christina, our VP Investor Relations, on the line with you today. With regards to TRX, so we just went through a name change. We managed to keep what we have as a ticker symbol on the New York Stock Exchange American as our name. So we're now known as TRX Gold. It keeps, it's part of the past and part of the future, all in one name. And so TRX, we break it down, Tanzania. So Tanzania over the last year has seen a significant transformation, just as TRX has seen a significant transformation. There's been significant recent investment in Tanzania by majors. A lot of you may have heard of BHP's investment into the country in Kabanga Nickel for $100 million. OreCorp's property is been in development through feasibility study. Geita Gold is expanding their operations, and you have a graphite producer in Walkabout Resources getting larger and going into development. But there's also been significant investment in other spots of the economy in Tanzania, particularly around the oil and gas sector, and also in the infrastructure sector with the Julius Nyerere Dam coming online in the next couple of years. The good thing about that is that's great from our perspective, from an ESG perspective, in the fact that the power lines for that are within 10 kilometers of the Buckreef property. The pylons are already up. Power lines are there. You actually have to drive right in under the lines as you come into our property about 5 kilometers away. So that Tanzania is becoming much more investor friendly than what you would have seen 4 or 5 years ago, and that is certainly benefiting us. Rapid production. So we've managed to take TRX, and when we went in and evaluated the test plant, we took the test plant, put in place a new mining plan, procured all the equipment, ball mills and tanks and other components, and expanded it to 360 tons per day very rapidly in less than 9 to 10 months at a very affordable cost of around $2 million, I think 1.6 million for that particular plant. And that plant is the basis of what you've seen reported in the last couple of quarters in the revenues, the gross profit margins, and significantly low cash cost. That is a taster for what Buckreef may be able to become. It's still small production, but it produces significant cash flow for the size of enterprise that we currently are. And it really gives us a de-risk from an investor perspective where Buckreef may go in the future. And then exploration. So exploration is something that always puts a smile on my face. It is a little bit of the unknown, which is why it's exciting. But certainly when we go around the Buckreef property and around Tanzania in general, we're on the inner greenstone, Lake Victoria greenstone belt. When you drive around this region, there is gold everywhere. You see the artisanal miners and the big mine waste dumps around this region. There's even a couple coming in the road, into the property off the main road. And then if you continue on down towards Buziba, there's even more of it. And then you get into Lumagasa and Ramagasa. There's just a lot of mining activity in this region. And on our property, we discovered 2 new shear zones this year, which we're very excited to be able to put drill bits into in the coming year and figuring out what we really have here. We were all comfortable with the Buckreef main zone, but there's a lot more gold to explore on this property yet to come. So without further ado, let's dig into the presentation. So TRX. Currently, we have over 2 million ounces in the measured and indicated category, which was updated approximately 2 years ago. That's at a good grade of around 1.8 grams a ton, which is very mineable from an open pit perspective. The good thing news is in the Buckreef property versus other properties is that mineralization comes to surface. So 10% of that's in the oxides. It comes to surface. The surface is flat and the shear zone is wide. So it's about 20 meters wide and it's consistent in mineralization. What does that mean? That means it's very mineable and you have lower cost as a result. Because it's your strip ratio, currently we're mining at a strip ratio around 4.5 to 1, and that's producing very good cash cost. And the mineralization is wide, so that means your dilution to your mill is less than it would be if your mineralization wasn't as wide. So that's the really good news about being able to get Buckreef into production very soon. We know that mineralization goes very deep, but it also goes to the northeast, which we had a press release a couple of weeks ago in, and it also, we're hopeful, will go to the south because that's where the drill bits are currently, and we're also going to infill that pit over time. We have exceptional exploration potential. I mentioned Anfield, I mentioned Buckreef West, and there's other potential around the property, and Andrew will get into that in a few minutes. We've been achieving really good recovery rates. So when we had the test plant, we had a balance between grind size and retention rate to achieve 90% recovery rates. What we've discovered in the 360 ton per day plant is we're now able to have it at a slightly higher throughput because it's really about grind size. So retention time isn't as important as the grind size is. So the Buckreef Gold is a finer gold, which means it's about grind size in order to expose that mineralization to the CIL plant. And that's how we drive our recovery rates, by balancing the retention times and the grind size. But we're able to have higher throughput rates now because we're able to have a lower retention time to achieve those 90% recovery rates versus the test plant. Being in the highly prospective Lakes Victoria Greenstone Belt is, as we develop our sulphide project, which needs to be much bigger than the 2018 PFS. The 2018 PFS had 51,000 ounces on average. We would aim to have that at least 3 to 4 times as large as that. That's the goal in a production profile with 10 plus years. But we're going through the MET study now. The preliminary study had very good recovery rates. So they were 3 holes that were deep in the deposit. And we were achieving on a simple flow sheet, which is a flotation regrind and a CIL, again, grind size, 90% recovery rates. Now we have the oxides at the top, which are 90% recovery rates. We have 19 holes in between, which will soon go to the labs to verify, hopefully, what we're seeing at the top and what we saw down deep. We won't know until we get those results back, but we know it on the top and we know at the bottom, or hopefully in between, is the same. And the key there too is our tails are very clean from the oxides. The tailings were very clean from the deeper into the deposit, non-acid generating. Again, from an ESG perspective, we're hopeful that we'll be able to look at dry stack tailings, which will be much more environmentally friendly than looking at wet tailings. It's also cheaper to construct. You have a plant, but the actual facility, berms and things like that are a lot simpler. Buckreef is fully de-risked. We got an extension to our 2032 on our special mining license, which was great. That was unasked for. I thanked the minister a couple of weeks ago for that. That shows how we work with governments and we interact with government on an ongoing basis, and we have a really good relationship with government and our joint venture partner in order to do that. When I arrived, we had less than 50 people at Buckreef. Today, there's 300 plus people at Buckreef working, and it's been seen as a success story in Tanzania, and we hope to continue it that way. The Oxide plant, I can't say enough good things about the team on the ground operating that plant. It's been operating better, quite frankly, than we expected. We have great recovery rates. The throughput rates are increasing, and it's producing cash flow, as you can see in the operating cash flow, even on a small base of 360 tons per day. Now we're going to ramp that up to 1,000 tons per day. We're run 100% by Tanzanian people, and to me that's a big key, because being in this region, there's a couple of things that are great. We're able to bring our supply chains close. We've done this predominantly with Tanzanians, building tanks, putting in place plinths, concrete works, roads, mining. All of those skill sets are local. The major things that we procure offshore have been ball mills and agitators, and we order those far out in order to make sure that we're going to be able to be on time and on budget in the projects that we execute. So all I got to say is we've had a great year in Tanzania. It's a good country to build a mine in. You can get a lot of things done very quickly, and the skill sets exist to really execute there. So I'm going to hand it over to Mike and Andrew to have any further comments to what I just mentioned.
Oh, I think
Mike.
that was well said from my side. Andrew, any supplementary comments?
Yeah, just one thing, again, Stephen, is incredibly safe in Tanzania. And I have to say we've been very, very welcomed, and I can only echo your comments about the team at site. I know some of those are listening tonight, and well done, guys. It's been great work. Thank you.
Excellent. So with regards to 2022 priorities and third quarter results. So the third quarter 2022, we have a different quarter because of our August 31st year end, was the first full quarter of the 360 ton per day plant operating at full capacity. So everybody sees the results. We've had record quarterly production, sales, profit margins, net income, and positive operating cash flow now for 2 quarters in a row. We are currently on time and on budget for the 1,000 ton per day processing plant. That should come online by the end of August and then have first fill and ramp up in through the third quarter, calendar third quarter. We've also had 3 drill bits on site, 1 grade control drilling bit, 2 diamond drill bits, and they've been very successful in the exploration program. Andrew will get into that in a few minutes, and that will continue and more than likely ramp up as we get the larger plant and larger cash flows on board into the next year. We've announced a new 10,000 meter drill program, which will now include the Anfield zone sometime in the next 12 months. And it will extend that to the Eastern Porphyry, and Andrew will get into that in a few minutes. We've completed the MET work holes for the Sulphide development project, as I just mentioned earlier. We're in the RFP process to determine what lab they will go to, and so there'll be further announcements on that. We've also started the geotech work on the larger pit, and that needs to be done to determine what the pit slopes are going to be for mining operations. The steeper the pit slopes, the lower the strip ratio. So we're looking forward to the results of that study over the next year. There'll be further studies as well on the Sulphide development project, and we'll be looking at a phased approach on that. So we're very much, hands-on in that. There's 90% of our resources are there. We need to make that into a big, large project in order to bring, a significant NAV per share for shareholders and value creation. And ultimately, all of this work that we've done in the last year has been done extremely safely. Safety is one of the #1 top priorities, as well as, I always say happy colleagues and happy employees are productive employees and safe employees. And so we've made a lot of changes at Buckreef over the last year. We've renovated our camp, put in place benefit plans, those sort of things, and we've been rewarded by what our employees and colleagues have done on the ground. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to the financial section next, and Mike will take you through the financial results of the third quarter.
Well, thank you, Stephen, and good afternoon, everyone. It's a pleasure being here today to talk to you about our Q3 financial results, which, as Stephen put it, were very exciting. I am going to echo some of the comments Stephen made in his introduction, but it's important to reiterate, as Stephen noted, Q3 was the first full quarter where we operated our 360 ton per day plant at its full nameplate capacity, or as we're referring to it here, it's really phase 1 of the much larger 1,000 ton per day plant. But having operated that plant for the full quarter, the plant achieved its highest operational outputs to date. And consequently, we're very, very, very pleased to be able to report what were effectively record financial results as a result of those strong operations. So operationally, the plant produced over 2,700 ounces this past quarter. That's above the public guidance range that we put out into the market earlier in the year of between 758 and 800 ounces a month. We were also able to sell over 3,000 ounces this past quarter, in part due to that record production. But we'd also had a built-up of in-circuit material, as well as some finished goods at the end of Q2, as we were ramping up the plant that we were able to sell in Q3 and benefited from this past quarter as well. The gold market has been a robust one. That certainly was over Q3. Has come off a little bit until today after the Fed announcement. But nevertheless, in Q3, we were able to achieve a very, very strong gold realized price of $1,890 an ounce. And that helped drive those record revenues of almost $6 million for us. That was all on the back of a very low and robust cash cost per ounce number of $508 that Stephen referred to earlier. That was also below our public guidance range of $725 to $825 an ounce. We were able to realize some operational efficiencies over this quarter around things like use of grinding media and other reagents as the plant got up and running. But certainly the impact of the higher production on certain fixed mining and processing costs also benefited us there as well. The operating results drove a very strong gross profit margin of over $4 million or 73%. A net income of $2 million, also record results for the company. And this will continue to be the case as we expand and grow, and we think is scalable with the much larger plant. And importantly, Stephen alluded to this as well, but the company was operating cash flow positive in Q3, the second consecutive quarter we've been able to report that in the company's history. And as you've heard us say a few times now, that helped enable reinvestment back into the business. It's helping fund the 1,000+ ton per day plant expansion, as well as some of the exploration growth that Andrew will speak to in a moment. So in summary, on the financial side, these results from only phase 1 of our processing plant expansion really, in our view, demonstrate the immense growth potential for the project. And we will continue to fund that growth using operating cash flow generated from the expanded operation. Next slide, please, Stephen. So as far as progress on the expansion of the oxide processing plant, we're well advanced on plant construction. And as Stephen mentioned earlier, within the next couple of months, we expect, as that plant comes online, to move from our current processing capacity of 360 tons per day to well over 1,000 tons per day. You will recall earlier this year, we were procured 2 identical ball mills as our existing 360 ton per day ball mill from the same manufacturer. And in the photo on the right, you can see the ball mills are on site. They've been placed on their plinths, and installation work is currently well underway. Also in the photos on the right, you'll see the expanded tank field, which is currently being developed. All 7 tanks have been fully erected, and the welds in the final 2 tanks are nearing completion. So very well advanced in that front as well. Importantly, all long lead items for the remaining construction have been procured and were made on schedule for project completion in late August, with a progressive ramp up into September following the first fill and final plant commissioning. We remain on budget. Our capital budget was approximately $4 million plus VAT. We've got about $2 million remaining on the CapEx budget to complete the construction. But importantly, very important to note, the company does have sufficient liquidity to fund that remaining capital expenditure. And once complete, the plant's expected to produce between 15 and 20,000 ounces a year, with the first couple of years of production expected to be in excess of that based on a higher grade profile. So importantly, as part of that production profile, Buckreef has been actively mining. And Andrew will talk to this a little bit, but we've built up a run-of-mine stockpile and a crushed mill feed stockpile of greater than 5,000 ounces with tremendous value attached to it. This stockpile will certainly help provide support for that production guidance that I alluded to well into the future. So with that, I'll hand it back to Andrew here to take us through some of the latest drill results and some of the excitement we've seen around exploration. Andrew.
Well, thank you very much, Mike, for that. And it's always great to see those photographs of the mills and the tanks, and indeed a great honour to have been at site to see all that being installed. Let me talk a little bit more about the future now. And in mining, we do have to look over many, many years. And so for our audience today, let me just orientate you with the image you have on the right. It's a composite from our drone surveys. You'll see that each of those black squares is 2 kilometers in size. And the total area we have in terms of our SML outlined in the red is 16 square kilometers. And in the center of the image, you can see the main zone. So Stephen, if you just mind just your cursor to the main zone, please. Thank you. So when we're showing the pit that's behind all of us and in the various photographs, you can just see the scale of that is quite small relative to the overall property. And in that area alone, we have 2 million ounces in measured and indicated, and as Stephen indicated, at a grade of about 1.8 grams per ton. So that's a great start, and certainly we're all very excited to join the company for that. Since then, we've continued to build out the Buckreef West zone. Again, Stephen, if you don't mind just highlighting the Buckreef West. It's off to the left. And then also, thank you very much. And then also we're seeing the discovery of the Anfield zone. And this is very, very special. And one of the exciting things about that, we got the geologists out into the field, and they came back having walked the ground very diligently between a historical resource called the Eastern Porphyry, which holds 100,000 ounces, and a operating, until recently operating, gold mine from a Chinese group just to the south of us. And you'll notice some key things here. One is that the Eastern Porphyry, known gold deposit, Anfield zone, which is delineated by a number of small artisanal pits, and down to the Chinese mine, are parallel to our main zone. Now, in the Anfield zone itself, most of these pits are shallow. The artisanal miners have left the property now, but two of the shafts were deeper and dewatered. And from that, we were able to extract the sample on the left that you see. It's very special. What's key to that is it looks exactly like the higher grades that we're seeing in the main zone itself. We can sort of compare this rock sample to the core and be very confident with that comment. But more importantly is the grade. This grab sample is running at 28 grams a ton. And for those of you thinking in ounces, that's just under an ounce a ton. We've had other samples come back at just over an ounce and around about 14 grams a ton and so on. So 3 kilometers to go and test. It's a great exploration play, and the drill rigs will be on that over the next 12 months. Geologically, this property is wide open. And why do I say that? Without going into a big, long geological lesson, is the geologists are beginning to really get their minds around the controls of mineralization. We know we're dealing with an Archean greenstone belt, and we know that the shear zones are controlling the gold mineralization, and we can see these that are running from northeast to southwest, and a second set that is running east-west parallel to the main bounding structures shown in green. But please take away that it's an immense opportunity for us to have many exploration targets and to expand both the scale and the scope of Buckreef. The next slide, please, Stephen. So just zooming in here now, just to the northern part of the main zone, you can see in the black outline the existing pit, quite recent. You can also see off to the bottom right here the Eastern Porphyry I was talking to, and we can see the camp on the left. So we've so far have published that we've got a 250-meter extension to that gold zone. It's still open to the north. It's about a 16% increase. The drill rig is currently drilling off this picture to the south. So we're going to be carrying on with that drilling program. We're seeing good width and grade of mineralization off to the north, and without going into all of the results we've got, let me just highlight some of the best ones for you, which we did publish. Hole 233, 19.5 meters, grading at 2.4 grams a ton. That one being somewhat shallow at 200 meters. We also see higher grade zones, 6 meters at 6.3 grams a ton. We see continued wide widths on another section, 25.5 meters, grading at 1 gram a ton. And then also hole 236, 28 meters at 3.4. And again, with a higher grade intersect in that of 7 meters, running at 7.22 grams a ton. We still got a lot of work to do in this area. We still have a lot of infill drilling. We still have to chase certain of these intersections back up to surface. But nonetheless, it's a great start to our exploration program. And once again, we're still open to the north, and we're still open at depth, of course, as well. Let's carry on then, please, Stephen.
ESG.
The next slide, just waiting for it to come onto the screen.
You're in Tanzania, so it's taking you a 5-second delay.
There we go.
There we go.
And of course, I should have mentioned to everybody that, of course, my greetings are from Tanzania. I'm sitting in Dar es Salaam tonight. So on the ESG side of things, we obviously are establishing very strong environmental standards and strengthening our community relationships. Again, you alluded to our chairman earlier, Stephen, and certainly this is something that's very, very important to Jim, and he's again set sort of visions around this in terms of our relationships with the community and the people of Tanzania, including the government. So what we're focused on is 2 key areas just on this presentation. Everybody's well aware that a lot of investment now looks at ESG, and in particular looks at carbon footprints. And so we're starting out on that journey. We know that 95% of our electricity, because we're on the main grid, is hydroelectric and natural gas. And as you mentioned, Stephen, the Julius Nyerere hydroelectric dam will be up and running in 2 to 3 years' time. We're going to be able to take advantage of the hydroelectric power that comes off that, and that will make the power in Tanzania predominantly hydroelectric. We're a mine site. We do have to have backup generators. We're currently in discussions with providers to do a hybrid genset and solar power solution to that. We're not discharging water. We insist that our suppliers of cyanide operate to the cyanide management codes. And again, our tailings we see are very clean. They're not acid generating, and that enables us to also be very confident in terms of our tailings and the environment. And also to bolster that, we're looking at dry stack, which removes a major environmental and social risk from the project on the dry stack tailings. In terms of our work on the social side of things with the local governments, we take very much a development partnership approach. We work with the local districts, with the local councils to identify what is mutually beneficial, both to the community, the people, and the business that we're in. So, for example, education has become a very key part of those discussions. We would in time want to be employing graduates from these schools into the property. And part of that is also for us to focus in on science, technology, engineering, and math. You can see on the photograph to the right, I actually took this photograph about 4 or 5 days ago, visiting the brand new science lab at the local secondary school, and just to see the enthusiasm of the students and the teachers that they can now do enhanced education is really very, very rewarding. We've also invested $2.6 million into the local communities in terms of land compensation. That process has gone superbly. It has been recognized as an example for other companies. The government has personally thanked us for the good work that has been done by the team on that. And of course, we have strong local ownership. We must emphasize also that we work with our joint venture partner, the State Mining Company, or STAMICO, and that has also been very, very helpful. 100% local workforce. And as you'd expect in an area like we are, employing locally, procuring locally, helps to address local poverty, which is Sustainable Development Goal #1. All of the board, all of the management have extensive mining experience, which helps in terms of governance. The audit committee and compensation committee as independent directors. We've got annual performance evaluations in process and being developed, which will go towards sustainability reporting standards. And of course, we have a zero tolerance for corruption and due report under ESMA. So Stephen, with that, I'm just going to conclude this slide by explaining the picture at the bottom. It's obviously a lot of people in front of the new tanks, but in the center of that is the Minister of Minerals, the Honourable Dr. Buteko, who was at our site just a couple of Saturdays ago. I was very fortunate to be there as they made a tour. And also in the middle there is our regional commissioner. And for those of you in the United States and North America, the regional commissioner has a prominence akin to being a governor. So it was a very high profile visit. It went very well, lots of smiles, lots of keep up the good work, and how can we help you? And it's wonderful to hear from the governments, how can we help? And so with that, I'm going to hand it back to you, Stephen. And thank you very much.
Yeah, no, thank you, Andrew. And one of the things that we do is work with our team on the ground at Buckreef, and we do take some risks to try to develop some different industries in Tanzania, as we've mentioned numerous times on a tank building and working with Gaston to get those guys on site. And they traditionally haven't built tanks because they're on the shores of Lake Victoria, but have the skill sets to do it and done a great job. And now we're taking that and moving it into what I'll call more smelting, and perhaps the local foundries should be able to provide us with ball mill liners on an ongoing basis, which currently isn't the business in Tanzania. But again, that's bringing the suppliers more local, which is good from a local jobs perspective. It also eliminates the supply chain disruptions that you may occur in today's world. Currently, ball mill liners come from China. If we could do it in Mwanza, we're going to do it in Mwanza. It's good for us. It's probably more cost effective, and it eliminates supply chain issues. So those are some of the things that we, as a management team at both site and at the TRX level, encourage our team to think about, and we're willing to take those calculated risks to put in place those business plans for the business. Now, with regards to what we've done in the last 18 months, which really just sets the stage for what we're going to do in the next 12 months. A lot of you have heard this. We have a new management team at TRX Gold and Buckreef Gold. 4 new directors over the last 12 months. We recapitalized the company. As Mike just mentioned, we do have sufficient liquidity to finish the plant builds. We've reset the financial statements and extinguished legacy liabilities and the convertible debt and things that were on, other things that were on the financial statements. One thing that you probably noticed as investors in our financial statements that no longer exist is the going concern note. That's not on there anymore. So we've managed to get the auditors very comfortable on the longevity of the business. We've recommenced exploration on the property, and that will only start to accelerate. We've had successful construction and commissioning of the 360 ton per day plant. We're hopeful to have the same thing happen to the 1,000 ton per day plant. No reasons why it won't be successful and on time, on budget, and operate well. It's the same plant, it's just 3 times bigger. And the MET study that was underway last year will continue this year. So what are we going to look for in the next 12 months? Look, there's a focus here. The longer term focus is going to be on improving resources per share through the drill bit, improving NAV per share through the Sulphide project and the Oxide projects, and ultimately improving and growing cash flow per share. Those are the valuation metrics that will drive value for shareholders. That's our focus. So with that, we have an exploration program which will be funded from the operating cash flow of the plant. That will hopefully result in significant improvements in resources per share. We are going to do our MET study and our broader studies on the Sulphide project development. That will hopefully drive significant NAV per share growth, while all at the same time continually to develop the project and continually expand production to increase cash flow per share, which will be reinvested into the business. So that's the mantra that we have. As Mike indicated, the plan that we put together for the oxides is a 7-8 year plan. And that's averaging 15 to 20,000 ounces per annum. In the first couple of years, there's a higher grade profile in that, so expect that to be over the upper end range as we go forward into the next couple of years. And then Andrew's got a drill bit turning too, so that plan will change. That will be out of date as soon as the drill bit goes somewhere else, because you know what we find in the main zone is the resources come to surface. So if there's more oxide resources, which we fully expect them to be as we turn the drill bit, perhaps in Buckreef West, which is right there, or in Anfield, then this is going to change over time as well. So with that, I'm going to go into the next slide of what the catalysts are. I went through what TRX means, which is growth, growth, growth is what I like. What you should expect to see is an expanded exploration program, the 1,000 ton per day coming online. Start to see the Sulphide project development moving forward, and hopefully lots of continued good news flow. That's the goal. So I don't see a lot of questions in the Q&A, Christina, so you may want to let the group know how to submit their questions. And like I said at the beginning of the presentation, all questions are we will answer.
Yeah, absolutely, Stephen. Thank you. Thanks, guys, for the wonderful presentation. You're right. I don't know if our shareholders are taking it easy on us right now. They're just starting to come in. So again, reminder to everyone to look up at the top of your screen. There's a black banner there with a Q&A button, and feel free to submit your questions that way.
So Christina, as they're answering, as they're putting questions towards us, I'll take them through a couple of the pictures here. So we have our core shed, which is very well organized now. Whenever we need to haul out a drill hole, very easy to do. The team lays it out. You see me and Gaston and Isaac at the 360 ton per day plant earlier in the year. I'm smiling Isaac and Gaston. I always say happy colleagues or productive colleagues. FEMA operators, who is our mining contractor. You see the team in front of the new ball mills. You see the drill rig in the northeast. You see the 2 new ball mills arriving. You see our first meeting with the minister back in January of 2020. The first blast of our pit. The tanks. The prior picture didn't have them all up. This one does. They're 75% welded. You see people discovering the Anfield zone, and you see a new school in Tembo. So lots of activity.
Thanks for that, Stephen. In the meantime, we did get a question from Jeff. Jeff asked, regarding the JV with Stamico and gold sales, is TRX and or its subsidiaries entitled to receive 100% of its investment in Buckreef back prior to sharing 55-45 in gold sales with Stamico?
Yeah, so the way the joint venture agreement is structured is TRX receives its investment back from Buckreef first, and then it's not 55-45% split in gold sales thereafter. It is 55-45% in any dividend distributions from Buckreef, and that dividend distribution will be after any capital investments, exploration investments, sustaining capital, all those sort of metrics that drive shareholder value.
Okay. Thank you. Maybe walk us through another photo. No other questions for the moment.
But we're getting off easy.
Christina, I noticed a number of people have raised their hands. Sorry to interrupt, Stephen.
Yeah.
Once again, the questions must come via the Q&A button.
That's correct. Yeah, through the Q&A button at the top of the screen. Entering a question there. They'll see a column show up to the right hand where they can hit ask a question and type it in.
Yeah, I'm not sure if there's a mechanism using this tool to unmute guests. So yeah, please use the Q&A tab up at the top.
Well, if not, Christina, I think that we could maybe just take a chance here. I do know Mike Niehauser. I think you can give him the mic.
Yeah, let's do that. I will right-click out and say allow Mike.
Sure.
And so Mike, you can come off of mute and ask a question.
Can you hear me?
We can hear you. Thanks,
yes.
Mike.
Great. I know that you mentioned phase development earlier on, and could you comment about, I know that the pre-fees looked at kind of going big and hard and fast, and the approach you've taken with the 360 to the 1,000, how might that extend into the sulfides, or what's your perspective on going forward with development? Not anything definite, but what are the options that you're looking at? And I'm just really interested in what you have to say.
Yeah, Mike, you're right. You know us quite well, and you know myself, and the fact that we're quite fluid. So there's 3 ball mills. The oxides are on top of the sulfides. And so essentially the oxide operation is a pre-stripping operation for the sulfides, a good cash flowing pre-stripping operation. And so all options are on the table with regards to the phased approach. The reason why we look at the phased approach is because we're into production earlier, and that means we can utilize cash flow from operations as part of the equity to expand any sulfides, whether it's new facilities or just expansions of our existing facilities. Given that there's 3 ball mills, there is no doubt that there will be sulfide material going through one of those ball mills at some point in time, and continuing on. So what we're looking at is making sure that we keep in mind shareholder value, particularly NAV per share, for shareholders as we expand that out. There may be options to purchase used ball mills as well, in order to reduce capital cost. And there may be options just to continually build tanks, depending on what the MET study tells us. So if the MET study tells us that we're going to have a similar type of operation in grind, crush, CIL, then Buckreef becomes a big tank firm. What we got to do to work to figure that out. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does. A couple other just real quick ones. I know that it's early, but do you have plans to publish an AISC? And were the drill widths mentioned earlier in the presentation, were those true widths? And those are my questions.
Yeah, so we didn't publish an AISC this quarter because we haven't declared commercial production because the 1,000 ton per day plant isn't online yet. Thereafter, then we'll start publishing AISCs. Right now, I believe if we were to include, Mike, the corporate expenditures would be running at about $200 per ounce. Would that be about right?
Yeah, that's about right, Stephen.
Yeah.
And true widths on the holes?
I'll let Andrew answer that one.
Yeah, on the ones that we've published, the true widths still being calculated, but very approximately, if you've got to say a 30-meter wide intersection on those, we're going to be around about 25 meters true width.
Okay, thank you very much. And
That's still very good.
Parenthetical comment, I really like what you're doing with the ball mill liners in Mwanza. Congratulations.
Yeah, no, thank you.
Thanks. Christine, I see we have another question, which I think is going to be for me, from Sean. Sean, yes, thank you very much for your comments about the exciting quarter. We've certainly had a lot of enjoyment with that excitement as well. Your question is, are there other exploration areas / regions you are assessing, and is the government keen on giving TRX first opportunity to explore same? So we've obviously been very, very focused on getting Buckreef where it is today. I think geologists, by their very nature, and that includes my background, obviously we look beyond the mine lease area. We are developing our knowledge of the area over this period of time. And that includes some of the licenses around us. I can't really comment on I can't really speak on behalf of the Tanzanian government, but I'd like to think that they've been very pleased with what we've done, and this obviously works in our favour as we make applications to ground.
Thank you, Andrew. And I see John Tomazos has his hand up. So John always has an interesting question. So I'm going to disable his mic as well.
I've done so. Go ahead, John.
Yeah, go ahead, John. Oh, sorry. I disabled it on him. I'm allow mic. So there we go. You're back, John. You can come off mute. I disabled you, John, and then I put you back on. So you need to hit unmute again. There you go.
Could you explain the name change to TRX? Does this mean that you might acquire a property over the line in Kenya or something in Canada or Mexico? Or should we imply, should we interpret that some people maybe having Tanzania in the name lowered the valuation or something else?
Yeah, so the name change, John, was predominantly driven that there's been a lot of change at the company, but we wanted to retain the past as well. And you are correct, as the company does start to evolve over time, it does increase options for shareholder value, and that was predominantly the reasons for the name change, and it is much shorter in TRX Gold.
Thank you.
Okay, Stephen, would you like, I will unmute Larry.
Yeah, unmute Larry and have him ask the question. Like I said, we're willing to answer all questions. So
Okay, wonderful. There's a bit of a background echo now, so for whoever may have their cell phone running perhaps at the same time, if they can lower that.
yeah, it's John. Yeah, it's John. It's on John's spot. Ready? You just did it. Thank you. Okay, Larry. Larry, you've been unmuted, so if you can unmute your Teams link, and then you can ask your question.
No.
You still can't hear you, Larry.
Seems like he's having trouble. Let's pass on to Joe Grant. In the meantime, Joe, you should be able to connect with us now by clicking on your microphone. Joe? All right. Larry, perhaps you're there now? For anybody who wants to ask a question, I remind you that you can click on the Q&A at the top of the screen. Gentlemen, my impression is that some people have just waved a hello to us and not necessarily want to ask us a question. So if anybody really does want to ask a question, please submit by the Q&A. We are coming up at 7 minutes to 4. And so we don't want to take up too much time past 4 p.m. Again, you can reach out to me, myself directly, or any other member of the team by way of email, and we're always pleased to answer your questions, of course, by phone as well.
Right, so we have some, let's try one or two more, Christina.
Sure.
And just announce by first name, please.
No problem. So we will see if there's a Robert on the line who would like to perhaps pose a question. You'll be able to unmute yourself.
Okay, that's fine. Let's try one or two more.
Okay. How about Marcel? Marcel, are you there? Do you have a question?
I see Robert has come off.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Oh, yes,
Yeah.
wonderful.
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Hi. Stephen, I just want to acknowledge your tremendous leadership and all the progress, as well as that of your team. It's been a 9-day difference from the singular leadership of Mr. Sinclair. I am a private investor. I have approximately 100,000 shares purchased in around 2006. And in all that time, I've been underwater with my shares. So I've been eagerly looking forward to a turnabout with TRX. I'm starting to see those things occurring, thankfully. So my question is, when can I, as a shareholder, begin to see some appreciation of my share value? My understanding is that traditionally gold does well in inflationary environments and when the equity markets are not doing particularly well. That seems to be the environment where you're in, and I was expecting some, again, share appreciation. Could you comment on that?
Yeah, I can comment on that, Marcel, because we do follow it. First of all, thank you for being a long-term shareholder and sticking with the company. Second of all is, look, the financial markets have been difficulty over the last 6 months or so. Traditionally, gold hasn't reacted the way a lot of people have anticipated it to react. It's gone down versus the expectation in an inflationary environment that it would go up. I know personally, I believe that's because of U.S. dollar strength as well as rising U.S. yields. A similar thing happened during COVID, and it took a while for gold to start to get the underpinnings in under it. Remember, gold went down in March of 2020 and it was at record highs by July of 2020. Now, obviously, COVID was a lot more volatile environment. What I can say on shares is pre-production companies, if you follow them, have been under significant pressure from a share price perspective. So our comparables have been under significant pressure. I believe TRX has actually performed vis-a-vis its peers this year. We're actually now up on the year, and that really only started after we started publishing revenues, cost of sales, positive operating cash flow. Prior to that, we were trading with the peer group. Thereafter, when we start to see revenue growth, gross profit growth, operating cash flow growth, the share price started to turn the other way. So I'm hopeful that as we have a focus on increasing operating cash flow, increasing resources per share, increasing NAV per share, that the share price will start to come along and start to be appreciate over the short, medium, and long term. Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Marcel. Robert, if you are there now, is there a question that you would like to ask? I see him lighting up. There may be some technical issues on his side, but you are unmuted. So if you have a question, feel free. In the meantime, we'll pass on to Rositza. Rositza, are you with us today? I could see you on the list here with your hand up.
Hello, good evening, and thank you for hosting a wonderful call. I have
Thank you.
Very brief questions, if I may. First of all, do you have any target in mind as to what percentage of your operating income you plan to dedicate on exploration activities?
Yes, we do, and we'll provide guidance on that in due course, Rosita. The drill program that it's costing us around, Andrew, quote me if I'm wrong here, but all in, it is costing around $175 per meter, including assays.
That's correct, which is very competitive in today's market.
It is.
And when the drill program ramps up, we've announced a 10,000 meter program, so you can cost that out. But I would expect to have at least a doubling of that program.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Secondly, and I know this is looking too far out into the future, but in a blue sky scenario, when would you anticipate the earliest production from the sulfides can start?
That's a good question. And the way I would answer that is, in the Oxide mine plan, there are certain high-grade pockets that you can dip down into in the sulfides, and that starts to begin in about 2.5 to 3 years. So there will be sulfides certainly going through the existing plant operations in that period of time. With regards to the broader program, that is yet to be determined, as you said, but it would be our anticipation, depending on how that comes together, to start having those come online in at least a 3 to 4 year period of a first phase.
Yeah, Stephen, I can also just, that time frame is quite correct. Rositza, I don't think I'm giving anything away to say that, and as you would expect, this is something that I'm looking at. And indeed, only earlier today, I was talking with our engineering partners, or Senko, on this very subject. We are in workshop. We are working through timelines at this very moment.
Excellent, great to hear. And final question, and arguably looking even further out into the future, what criteria or what requirements would you expect to have in place before you can declare your inaugural dividend program?
Yeah, so as I said, our focus right now has been on growing resource per share, cash flow per share, and NAV per share. So, I would expect that in order to get into a dividend program, we would need to be into the sulfide program.
Understood. Thanks again for your time.
Thank you, Rosita. So everyone, it is a little bit past 4 p.m. right now, and for the sake of letting everyone get back to their day, myself and my colleagues would like to thank everyone for joining us today. It's been a pleasure. We will be holding these calls on a more regular basis so that you can join us and ask questions live. For those of you who could not submit a question, please reach out to me at my email or by phone. Email c.lally@trxgold.com. And gentlemen, I'll pass the floor over to you to say goodbye. But thanks again and have a great day.
Yeah, no, thanks everybody for joining. And again, I would like to thank our shareholders for their support. And I hope there are some future shareholders on this particular call. Thank you for your questions. And on behalf of my colleagues, thank you again and have a good evening.
Thank you.
Thanks all.
Goodbye.